I recently picked up the Noctua NH-U12S Chromax Black after having some serious problems with my CPU's stock cooler. I am currently exporting a 25-minute full 4K video, but this is on the Ryzen 9 3900X, and the CPU core temperature, according to Dragon Center, is running at 91 degrees C. That's not good. The absolute peak for this CPU actually got up to about 93 degrees Celsius, so I knew that the Noctua was going to be a worthwhile buy. We're going to jump into a test using the Noctua while rendering some 4K footage out of DaVinci Resolve Studio 17, where we'll monitor the CPU temperature, the fan usage, and overall power draw on the system. But first, time for an unboxing. On both of my previous CPUs, I've only actually ever used the stock coolers that came in the box, both my Ryzen 2700 and my Ryzen 3900X, which I'm currently upgrading a cooler for. The chromax.black option for Noctua was actually the first time I've considered Noctua, because they used to always have those kind of big, ugly brown fan CPUs. But this one works really nicely to go in my NZXT case with the rest of my build. In the box with the cooler comes with all the tools you need, all the screws and different mounts depending on the motherboard and CPU that you are using. Then it's literally just a case of removing your old stock cooler, which mine was a bit annoying, having clips trying to pop it off, and mounting the new brackets for the Noctua onto your motherboard. While the Noctua cooler does appear to be very big and quite heavy, this is actually one of the lighter models that they make, and the mounting brackets that they provide and the mounting system that they use is definitely more than enough to keep everything in place for your build. Now, with the cooler mounted and all good to go, let's get into some testing on this 4K export in DaVinci Resolve Studio 17. I installed my new Noctua cooler a few days ago now, and I've just finished a project that's about 8.5 minutes of 4K on a 4K timeline. Lots of varied footage, varied video clips, varied audio clips, so it should be an interesting export to see how the CPU temperature fares with this one, and how much power usage we're going to have a problem with. The other day I just started having some issues with my power supply seeming to max out when performing some tasks within DaVinci Resolve. The power supply I have is 600 watts EVGA bronze, I believe, and it's done really well up until last week. It's essentially causing my whole system to like throttle, so I'm now staying away from any of those heavy tasks until my new power supply arrives, which actually should be today. But anyway, on the previous export, which you saw at the beginning of this video, the old stock cooler was causing my CPU to peak around 93 to 94 degrees Celsius. With the new Noctua, let's just have a quick look at Dragon Center. So in Dragon Center right now, we're doing absolutely nothing, and we're clocking around 3.7 gigahertz to 4.3. CPU core temperature is about 40 to 50%, and CPU fan is about 55%. So we're gonna set this export to go. Okay, we're now gonna set it to export. So it's the 4K timeline exporting in 4K with the Ryzen 9 3900X using the Noctua NH-U12S, is that what it's called? NH-U12S? The Chromax one, the nice looking black one. So, it's an 8-minute clip, Ryzen 900. It's gonna have it exported in 6 minutes. 4K export in 6 minutes. Boom. And the CPU core temperature. CPU usage is at about 100%, classic. Usage about 4 to 4.1 gigahertz. Core temperatures at about 75 degrees, so that's come down by nearly 20 degrees. CPU fan is maxed out. So that is kind of par for the course. My export time, I can just see, has actually gone up to about 7.5 minutes to 8 minutes. I'm also just going to view in Task Manager just to see what's going on in terms of usage. Yeah, so DaVinci Resolve, obviously high CPU usage, high power usage, and we're using about 12.5 gig of RAM. I'm just going to look at the progress on the timeline that we've made. Okay, so we're into the bulk of the video. At the very beginning of the video, there's a lot more cuts and a few more overlays and things. whereas this section of the video is a little bit more talking head with some overlays, but I have kept the talking head just underneath as well, which sometimes can actually be a problem. CPU core temperature is at 80%, but it seems to not be going above 80, because it keeps on getting up to 80 and then dropping back down again. It's not like rolling over. It's sort of, I think 80 might be the bumper. And yeah, again, this is doing a literal 4K export. In terms of fan noise here, it is maxed out at 100%. You definitely will be able to hear it right now, but it's, compared to my stock cooler, it's so quiet. The stock cooler that came with the 3900X was so loud, and especially as soon as you kicked it up into gear, it was just like screaming the entire time. Whereas the Noctua is like, it just sounds like an actual fan. It sounds like the sort of fan you'd have on to keep cool in the summertime, so it's not too bad. I don't have a decibel meter, so I can't tell you exactly, but totally manageable. Okay, the last minute. Core temperatures have not gone over 80 degrees once, which is good. That's nice, it's different. It's good for me. I'm in the amber, but I'm not all the way in the red like I was before. And yeah, everything's running pretty good. The one problem I do have here, as I mentioned before, is that my power supply does just need beefing up a bit. So once I do have my new power supply, it should be a lot better. Core temperature actually has just hit 81. But, oh, and 82. I spoke way too soon. Okay, so we hit 82 at about the very end. Don't get to 83, don't be like that. And export complete. Okay, so just in case you were curious, and the core temperature drops down immediately as soon as that export is finished. It drops down, and we're nice and healthy around 60. The CPU has performed really well for me in the last couple of weeks since I installed it. Absolutely insanely fast. But yeah, definitely if you are considering the CPU, get a better cooler. This Noctua does seem to do really well. There are heavier options, like more powerful options from Noctua, and obviously you can look into liquid cooling, all sorts. But definitely the stock cooler, for me on the Ryzen 7 2700, which is my old CPU, that stock cooler did great at the base clock. But yeah, this 3900X, man, definitely runs hot, and they definitely should have put out a better cooler with it. But yeah, that 8 18 video, actually, the beginning prediction was 6 minutes 30, and then it actually finished at just under 9 minutes at 8 53. So 4K timeline, 4K export, about real-time export time. So if you are looking into the Ryzen 9 3900X as a content creator, I recommend it highly. This is all within DaVinci Resolve 17 Studio, but you'll get similar performance in pretty much anything. And yes, needless to say, it absolutely demolishes gameplay as well. So yeah, I'm going to leave that there for this video. Thanks very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Be sure to come back for the power supply upgrade video, and I'm going to sort of show you the troubleshooting and the problems I've actually had with my current power supply, and then the installation as well. I'll see you in the next video.